Welcome back to our third and final installment of the basics of visualization, which is looking at the ggplot. So to start out, actually I'm going to clean up some of this basics code that y'all are going to have access to when you open up your application assignment. I'm a big believer in not having stuff that might mess y'all up, and so I'm going to delete some of this quantitative data that y'all never used. Or I didn't use. I'm going to also delete this original P2 that we didn't end up using. The other thing is I'm going to delete some of these calls for like the P3 because when we printed, we really only wanted the one P4. And then I'm also going to delete this label here that labels like the black and white theme because it's going to override the subtitle that says by diet. So I don't want that. And I am just going to keep the black and white theme because when you come in here, you are going to take the code that you see me deleting and cleaning up, and you're going to use that for your application assignment. And so it will benefit you to have a nice tight set of code that you can just work from, as opposed to having code that I use to teach you. So I'm going to get this all nice and clean, and the reason again I'm doing this is so that your stuff will look nice and tight. Okay, so that looks nice, and that will be nice for you all to work off of. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I'm going to clean this up a little bit too. Clean that up. Run that again. Just, I want to reiterate though, remember this is a continuation of the work that we've been doing. So the reason that I didn't run the library line was because I have already been in here. Remember though that when you come in to do any coding, if it's a new session for you, you need to start your code from the lines above and work your way down. Now I have at the end of your notes, so when you all see your notes, you will see a list of resources. So this is a list of resources. These are things that will be valuable for you when you're working on creating your ggplot for your final project. So these are all things that will help you to make the plot that you're interested in making for your news story. Now, what I do, and I have all of these open, so I'm going to show you. What I do is I usually will go in, find the plot that I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I had in my head, and I will say, all right, what's the code for that? First, I'm going to say some of you might not like learning from a video. This, you could read through this. So what we talked about and I taught you in this video, you might enjoy reading. And this is just an introduction to the ggplot. So this is kind of what we talked about, but this is in like written form. So if you want to read about ggplot instead of the way that I just explained it in these videos, this is a good complete guide. And that would be number 1 in your R resources at the end of your notes. Okay. The second thing I have at the end of your notes is a cheat sheet. And so these are all of kind of the pieces of code and very small like icons on what those pieces of code create. So if you're struggling and you're like, what's that one? Or I want to make a graph that looks like this, you can look at this cheat sheet and it will help you to know what piece of code you want. For example, if you want a histogram, how do you write that? What are some of the what are some of the words or terms that are necessary within that geom histogram? So that's helpful. That's in the back, and that's number 2. Number 3, and this is where I was saying, if it were me and I'm like, what graph am I thinking about? I scroll through sometimes and I'm like, I want to make a graph and I can't think of, and I'll look for inspiration. And this is kind of one way that I might do that. And I look and then I see the code that coincides with that. And then I'll just change the variables based on what variables I have in my data. Again, this is when it's really important for y'all to have a very good understanding of what data is categorical, what data is quantitative. And also you're going to have to reach deep inside of yourself and know what data is discrete, what data is continuous, what data is time data, because it will affect what graphs you choose. But nevertheless, here are 50 different types of ggplots that you can choose from. It shows you how diverse this is and how cool you actually can make your ggplats. Super fun. Anyway, that's number 3 on your list. Then number 4, this will help you for this week's application assignment because I give you the different themes, but then it also shows you, after it tells you what the themes are, it shows you the examples of them. So like here is the black and white theme, the gray theme. So it'll help you to match the theme that's shown with the application assignment so you know which one to choose. And then you can just copy the theme that you see matches the theme on the application assignment, because this week what I'm tasking you with is figuring out how to make the graph that I'm showing you. So that's number 4 on your resources. Number 5 is this quick start to ggplats. So this is nice because it shows you a bunch of different graphs and it gives you like kind of a base, like how you start to create them. One thing that I haven't mentioned, and I regret not showing this in the videos when we were creating things, but if you are making these ggplats, one of the reasons that I create different objects is because I like to make sure that all of my lines of code are working correctly. But you can start adding to your lines of code and not make individual objects. You don't have to do that. If you choose to, you could have just one object. You could have just P1, and you could add all of these lines to P1. If you do that, the plus sign has to go at the end of the line. So you'll notice here it's got ggplat plus and then the geom bar. You can do it that way. Just make sure that your plus is at the end. However, the reason I choose this particular method is because then I can check and make sure that each of the individual lines is working correctly. So then if I run into an error, I know where the error is and I don't have a huge chunk of code that I have to figure out where in that haystack I'm having an issue. But again, you see that here, when it's running these lines, it's adding the plus sign to the end, and then that's how it's adding excuse me, it's adding the next line of code. So again here, it's 3 lines, which is fine. You can do that too with your ggplat code, but the plus sign has to be added to the end. So what I like about these resources is that you can see the code and then you see the result of it. So you see here, this is the theme minimal, the geom bar, and this is the result of it. So those are valuable because you can see how to create something. If you like, for example, having your numeric value actually on the graph, you can see how you do that and what code you need to do that. So that would be number 5. Number 6, this is helpful for this week's application assignment too, because it shows you some of the code to change the axis on your Y and X. So here axis for text on the Y and axis for text on the X, and it shows you how to change it to bold. This is the color, the size of it, and then angling. So the color is connected to the last part of your resources. That's number 7. These are here, the one that's stated, that's a hexacolor, but these are actual colors. The nice thing about in R, when you say the color, it should show up in the color that's listed. So you'll be able to check to make sure that the color is correct. And I also have colors listed at the end of your set of guided notes for this week. So hopefully that will be helpful for you with the ggplat. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, happy coding!